Has Supermassive Games already hinted at a big plot point in Directive 8020 without us knowing it? Maybe. Let's take a look at some evidence and find out. We'll start with this section of Man and Medan, which contains a giant hint that most people know about, but for some reason I haven't discussed in a video yet.
The lighthouse stood atop an atoll, isolated from the rest of the world, a lone beacon in the night, a sailor's respite. They go to the top of the lighthouse, and there, splayed out on the floor, is a man and a woman brutally murdered with an axe. Okay, fine, then it was a meat hook. They were slashed with a meat hook and hung from the rafters.
At the time, it seemed like it was just, as the characters in the story point out, pretty generic horror movie stuff. Of course, now we're aware that it was much more than that all along. It was a giant hint about plot elements from The Devil in Me.
The lighthouse stood atop an atoll. They go to the top of the lighthouse, and there, splayed out on the floor, is a man and a woman brutally murdered with an axe. Okay, fine, then it was a meat hook. They were slashed with a meat hook and hung from the rafters.
This is a pretty huge reveal as far as hints go, but I'm guessing Supermassive felt they were safe in dropping it into Medan, since Devil in Me was a full 3 games away. The odds of anyone noticing the connection before playing Devil in Me was pretty long. I mean, I didn't even notice it, and making crazy guesses about Dark Pictures games is literally what this channel is for. While the newspaper about the disappearing expedition from Man and Medan gave us some insight into the backstory of House of Ashes, and the TV listing about Architects of Murder introduced Kate Wilder and the general premise of Devil in Me, there hasn't been another obvious nod to specific plot points in a future game, the way Brad's Lighthouse narrative sets up Devil in Me. Or has there? Check out this article from Little Hope. You've likely seen it before. It's the article on the back of the Church Pastor Arrested newspaper. This article is what made me suspect that a future game was going to be moon-themed. Now that turned out to be wrong, of course. While Directive 8020 is a sci-fi space horror title, it doesn't seem to be set on Earth's moon. But what if the important part isn't the location that Apollo 10 went to, but rather the mission it was on? When I heard this description of the Cassiopeia in the teaser trailer at the end of Devil in Me,
the forward reconnaissance vessel Cassiopeia,
it reminded me of the description of the scouting mission that Apollo 10 was on. Both Apollo 10 and the Cassiopeia are on scouting missions. Apollo 10 was there to make sure that they could get to the moon, orbit around safely a number of times, photograph the Sea of Tranquility, and both detach and reattach the lunar lander, then make it safely back to Earth. And while we're not completely sure what the Cassiopeia's mission is, as a forward reconnaissance vessel, it probably involves a lot of cartography from space. So what's the significance of this connection? Check out these lines from the Apollo 10 article. The astronauts' craft was fueled with only half what would be required for landing. Had they literally tried to land on the moon, they couldn't have gotten off. That is a true story about Apollo 10. Also, the landing craft was too heavy and the controlling software wasn't done. But I have to ask, why was such a memorable detail included in this write-up? Is this related to what's going to happen to the Cassiopeia during Directive 8020? In each Dark Pictures game, there's an event that serves to trap the players in a location where the main action of the game happens. In Medan, it's the pirate kidnapping that takes them to the Orang Medan. In Little Hope, it's the bus crash, and also Andrew being crazy. In House of Ashes, it's the earthquake and vampire assault. And in Devil in Me, it's literally walking through the threshold into the hotel. There is always a point of no return, where the characters can't just opt out. So is that line from the newspaper in Little Hope a Brad's Ghost Story style prediction of the point of no return that we're going to see in Directive 8020? Will a disaster on the ship, probably related to the impact we hear about in the teaser trailer, force the Cassiopeia to land on the planet they're scouting, which may or may not be the Bat Monster's homeworld? The drawback being that they don't have enough fuel to take off again? That's what would have happened to Apollo 10 had something bad happened on the orbiter. And it's a hell of a great way to trap some characters on a planet in a terrible situation. Of course, even if this guess is correct and the characters do get stranded on the planet, we still don't have any idea about the majority of the plot. What's the problem that forces them down to the planet? What's the nature of the threat they're facing? Will they be able to find a way home? Now you might be thinking, that's a lot of guessing to do based on 2 lines from one article in Little Hope. But I haven't actually read you the next paragraph yet. Check this out. Technology is getting more advanced all of the time. Training is growing more sophisticated. Yet human nature being what it is, measures like this will be needed for a long time still to counter the urge in us all to reach beyond. Now we know that Directive 8020 is set a long time after this newspaper article was written. But as it says, human nature doesn't change that much. Is it just me, or is this as close as they can come to saying, yeah, this is what a future game is going to be about? Now, we can't know if any of this is accurate, since we know approximately 0.5% of 8020's plot right now. Hell, the game could decide to pull an Event Horizon and the whole thing just takes place on spaceships. But if the Apollo 10 book review does, in fact, describe a plot point from Directive 8020, just as Brad's Lighthouse story did for Devil in Me, then I guess we're gonna have to start scouring House of Ashes for major clues about Game 6, whatever that winds up being. I've been the Hidden Object Guru, thanks for watching. If you had a good time and you'd like to see more, there's buttons coming up to help with that. Questions, comments, and suggestions for other topics we should cover go in the comments section below the video. We'll see you back here for more Dark Pictures videos, but until then I'll say that's right. Au revoir.